What's up, guys? Producer TCustomz with TCustomz.com. Today I want to break down a little more detailed breakdown. The newest track is called Inspired Thought. It's kind of a new school hip-hop beat with like kind of a dark vibe. It's all composed, doesn't contain any samples. And for this particular breakdown video, I kind of want to just talk about, like I do before, talk about the elements that are used, but also kind of talk about the patches, the actual VSTs that I'm using for my sounds, and talk about some more detailed processing and different effects and things that I'm putting on the beat. So the main sound that I used throughout the beat, that I started this beat with, was a patch in Spectrasonics Omnisphere. It's called Pipe Organ Cathedral. And it's basically just a pipe organ sound. I also did add a auto filter as a high pass filter to roll off the low end to go ahead and make room for. I know it was gonna have a kick and a bass line, so I went ahead and did that to make room, and then applied also an auto pan just to give it some variation from the left to right channel. A lot of times I like to go ahead and do pre-processing as I'm making the beat and kind of do some pre-mixing and whatnot. That way, when I go back for my final mix at the end, I don't have as much work to do. Mainly I can get a lot of my levels right, and then if I need to tweak any frequencies or do anything like that, but a lot of my initial work is already done. And so here's the little chord progression with the organ that I came up with. Nothing too crazy, it just gives me a foundation to work with, and then I can start adding layers and that sort of thing. So next, after the the main organ progression, I went ahead and started working with the drums. I have a kick and a snare, and for the kick, I'm only using a single kick, so I found something that was already stock in one of the kits that I had. One thing that I did do was I rolled off, you can see right here with this high pass filter, I rolled off some of the low end, because it had a little too much sub in it for what I wanted, so I just rolled it off. And also it helped me when when the bass line comes in, that sort of thing. For the snare, I actually took like a snare slash clap from a drum loop that I had. You can see that I just cut that out of the loop, and then I also took another snap and just layered those. So here's what the here's what the drum sequence sounds like with the organ. Alright, so next I went ahead and opted for a shaker. Instead of having like a main hi-hat that keeps the drives the percussion, I opted in for a shaker on this particular track. Now you can see right here the pattern is just straight. Basically you could have clicked this in. There's no variation in any of the velocities or even any of the the timing or anything. It's just all straight, snap to the grid. So if I play that through, it just sounds super stiff. But what I did is then I added an MPC groove to it. So then I adjusted the settings, and then it sounds, a lot more loose. In addition to that shaker, I also added another shaker, and I added some random panning to it, so it just kind of bounces back and forth between the left and right channel, and just offers the whole loop just some more variation. So at this point, I went back into Omnisphere and started looking at some of the lead and funk synth patches that were in there. And that's kind of what the next element I went with next for this particular beat. So this synth patch is called TR-Homie. Not really sure about the name, but so this is what it sounds like. And so again, you can see this chain of effects for this synth. I've got again a high pass filter. I'm rolling off a lot of the frequencies under, like, say 460 hertz. I've got some auto pan again to take advantage of the stereo field. I'm using some delay, some 4/4 delay, a little bit of reverb, and then also I use another additional EQ just to heighten some of the higher end. So after the synth, I went back in and added some more percussive elements to it. Just found a couple extra sounds. You know, added some reverb, did some filtering, added some delay, did a little bit of different stuff with each sample. And then I also added crashes. I didn't do any kind of processing with this particular sample. It was pretty much good stock. So here's everything, including the crash, the extra percussion, and the synth. So next I loaded back up another Omnisphere. I was looking for some more, you know, synth sounds, and found a patch called Squareness 2. Now keep in mind this is slightly modified. You know, I had to do some tweaking on it, but the overall stock patch sound is very similar to what I'm using for this beat. And then again, you know, I'm using auto pan, some reverb, delay. Those are pretty much standard effects that I'm putting on majority of my stuff. So here's the little riff that I came up with. And then with the beat. So next I wanted to get, you know, some low end, some bass. Now I opted for Trillion for this particular beat, and the patch I'm using Clicky 106 sub patch. I did some tweaking to this, and you know, it's got like a click in the stock patch. I had to remove that and, you know, do some other tweaking to the overall patch, but that was the bass patch that I used. And then I also took the same patch, doubled it, pitched it up an octave, and did some different filtering, and just to give it you know, a wider sound. And then also, which I don't do in a lot of my tracks, it just depends on how everything sets in the mix, but I'm using sidechain compression so my bass ducks when my kick hits. And that's why you see this little compressor here, and you got the sidechain, the kicks triggering the bass, or triggering this compressor, so when the kick hits, this ducks for just a short period of time. And I'm doing that on both of these bass sounds that I have layered. And so this isn't like a really, you know, difficult pattern, you know, sequence either. With my bass, you can see kind of the MIDI notes and progression that I'm using here. It's not, it just kind of gives it an extra groove, an extra feel when you add that bass in. So here's what it sounds like with the bass included. So next I had to get into my, you know, my Vox sample kit and pick out some pretty dope, you know, vocal samples to kind of add in. And so, you know, I'm using a couple of those. I'm using about three or four, I believe, from the Vox sample kit. And these vocal stabs are just a really, you know, awesome way to give your track just some extra energy and just kind of hype it up, take it to the next level. were the main parts that I used for the beat. I went ahead and added some transition sounds. I had about 4 different transition sounds that I'm using, some FX, and then I have a chime that comes in, you know, like every 4 bars or something like that. And so I'm just kind of pretty much doing, I don't even think I'm doing any kind of effects. I may done some panning. Let me see. For the chimes, I'm using a Waves plugin. You can see I did this, you know, I did this EQ, delay, reverb, and then this S1 imager is in the Waves bundle. And I'm actually using that to do some automation, some panning like this from left to right. So you can see that right here. And then I also added some really subtle extra percussion for the hook. I used a plugin called Stylus RMX and loaded up a conga loop. This 94 congas. I also did manipulate the main, like when you use Stylus RMX, when you drag the MIDI track down, it already generates you you know, a MIDI track. I did manipulate some of these notes, as you can see, but it's very subtle. You may not even notice it. It really was just there to have some additional substance for the hook, and just kind of, you might just randomly hear it, but it's very low. It's intentionally low in the mix. It wasn't intended to be anything to break through or, you know, be heard really well. It just kind of gives some extra filler to the hook of the track. And then just one other like bongo sample that just comes in, and it's very subtle as well. You may not even hear it, but it's, you know, just to give some extra filler to the hook. And so one of the last things I did was I took the original lead synth track that I made with Omnisphere, and I duplicated it. So I have the exact same MIDI notes, this exact same melody and everything like that. I just loaded it in a slightly different lead sound. It's called 70 Solo Synth. And again, with this track, I did also do some minor variation and did some tweaking on the settings for the plugin, but it's mainly the stock sound. I mean, it's very similar to the stock sound that comes with Omnisphere. I pitched it up a couple octaves, that way it's got a, you know, a higher tone, and then I doubled that for the hook. So again, it's the same melody that plays, it's just a higher pitch that comes in for the chorus and just brings it, you know, again, just makes it fuller sound. And so I pretty much had all the, you know, the main elements that I wanted to include. So you know, I started stripping them away and started turning it into a verse, and you know, expanding the track and fully arranging it. I did add one more small synth in for the verse, second verse. It just comes in for you know, a short time, but nothing too crazy. Just a small you know, just a small simple melody with another Omnisphere lead patch. And that was pretty much it. Like I said, just the arrangement, and then the final mix. A lot of the elements I had already done pre-mixing on and tweaked, and all these effects, a lot of the stuff I'm adding as I'm creating. So it's not as much for me at the end to, you know, do the final mixing and everything. So as far as the final like mastering and compression of the track, I like to use, it's a mastering plugin in Ableton. I use it for like kind of a pre-mastering or pre-compression, and so I do a light compression, and I also like the EQ curve that this generates. It gives it a, as it says, analog warmth. It gives it kind of a warm sound with this EQ curve. So I just do a very minor compression with this, and you know, take advantage of this EQ, and then also do my final you know, my final mastering and everything, do that inside of Isotope Ozone. So I believe that was pretty much it. I mean, pretty much all the elements I believe I covered. And so if you guys, you know, like the video, make sure to like, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below, let me know what you thought. And you know, producers who are interested in the Vox sample kit, you know, there'll be a link to that in the description, and then also at the end of the video. So Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
Customs.